But comics, it's, especially doing it alone, it's just you and the paper, anything can happen.
Lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and with me today I have Natalia Hernandez. She comes from a very famous family in comic books of cartoonists, and it's a pleasure to be able to have you here to chat.
Happy to be here.
I know who you are, but if you could just briefly, for anybody that may not be as familiar with your work, if you could just give us a rundown on who you are.
Well, I guess I'm better known as Gilbert Hernandez's daughter of fame. So comics has always been there. I've made mini comics for about 11 years now, and I'm slowly making my way to regular comics out there.
So how old were you when you started when you did your first, because you're pretty young. So when was your first mini comic actually like printed out and brought to, because you did it at cons, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah. So my first comic, I think I started it when I was 7 and then I turned 8. But my dad helped a lot in structuring it, but I wrote and drew the whole thing pretty much. So there's a whole story there if you'd like to hear.
I would, of course, I want to hear it all.
Well, I had done, so comics were always a constant in the household for obvious reasons. And I liked sequential storytelling, and I had a little sketchbook, which I drew like little stories of what I was making up when I was playing with toys and stuff. And my dad saw that, I showed him, and he thought it would be a great idea to do a comic together. So we'd sit down on Fridays, and then I would draw and dictate what was going on in the scene, and we'd try to put it together. And that's how the first one happened, and I liked it so much, so it was like, well, I gotta do it every year. So I did it pretty much 11 years straight. I think I skipped 1 year at some point. That was my start in comics.
That's crazy. You make me feel like I'm not doing enough. You start at 7 and 8, and I'm over here.
Well, a little crazy.
I mean, that's such an awesome story, because like I discovered, actually I learned that you did comics because I was watching Cartoonist Kayfabe. I don't know if you're familiar with that YouTube channel.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they were talking about how they had seen some of your mini comics at cons and stuff with your dad, and I had no idea. So I looked you up, and then I saw that you also worked on some of the Young Animal stuff with the Shade the Changing Girl, and then you were in one of my favorite projects of, I think it came out in 2020, I believe, was the Hey Amateur with Shelley Bond. And Shelley Bond's my favorite editor. She might be I think she's my favorite person in comics.
Oh, she's great. Yeah.
So I wanted to be able to pick your brain, because I've been a huge fan of your dad's work and your uncle's work for a long time. So it's just really cool to see that passed down from generation. So would you say that, like, well, obviously your dad is a huge influence artistically, but what other artists would you say are influential?
Ooh, artists? Oh boy. Well, right now I'm into kind of the like Art Nouveau surrealist movement, like Kay Nielsen or Harry Clark, because I've been doing a series on movie stars, Hollywood stars, on my art Instagram. Mm-hmm. So I've been getting into more dramatic lighting, but all sorts. I loved Moomin comics growing up, so like my favorites. And yeah, I don't know. My dad did give me some drawing lessons, but they were more, okay, what's the goofiest face you can draw? And we challenge each other. That was my lessons in cartooning there. But I don't know. I think, well, to be clear, the whole family does something creative, whether it's a hobby or, so I think it's just in our blood.
Well, so like I got some of your mini comics. I loved them. I loved the story that you did in the Hey Amateur. I was wondering, like, what is the next step? I know that I'm sure the pandemic has kind of put a hamper in a lot of people's plans. And you said, I know that most of your stuff you would sell at cons. So what is the next step for you? What would you like to do next? Have you thought about Kickstarter possibly for a project?
Yeah, I was thinking of self-publishing again. I have some personal projects I'm working on, and possibly selling online, which is probably a lot smarter than, yeah, especially now. So
yeah.
work out.
what kind of projects would you like to publish? Tell us without maybe spoiling something that you may have in the works.
Oh, well, for the Hey Amateur, I really enjoyed exploring the lucid dreaming thing. That
Yeah.
was and so I like kind of ideas of thought. And what's great about alternative comics, especially, is there's no one way to structure your story, or even like sequential panels. You don't have to do that. You can do it anyway. Like I was really inspired by Emil Ferris's My Favorite Thing is Monsters.
Yeah, that's a good
How it
one.
really flows in the images, and I think that would be really fun to do more. Just I question comics of like, what does this mean in the universe and that sort of thing.
And is there any other mediums that you like working in besides like just pencil and paper?
Yeah, I studied film in high school and made some short films, so I love movies and cinema. So I like to write scripts and try to make little shorts with my friends. We haven't been able to do in a while, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
What is the the goal for you? Do you want to like do comics just on your own? Do you want to do comics with like I guess corporate characters? I don't know how else to say it. I mean, obviously, like your dad he's dabbled in both. Mostly it's the Love and Rockets, which everybody knows, and then he has the other side projects that he'll do. But what's your ultimate goal?
I guess right now, just to do my own thing, have a story, just put my own story and see what happens, where it goes.
I know you said that like you've toyed with the idea of self-publishing, but have you set any goals for like, okay, I want to have something out by this date?
Yes, but then lately life has been getting in the way of that. But
Mm.
yeah, I think it's a lot of self-discipline as well, because I put school first for so long, and it's like,
Right.
okay, maybe now is a good time to get cracking, get on the good foot.
Besides, and then you said like I know you said your whole family's creative, whether it's art or other stuff. Is there any other like form of art that you like to create besides just comic books? Do you dabble in any other type of things?
Well, I guess the main thing is I like to draw, so any like
Okay.
visual arts type stuff. I like chalk pastels for different mediums, and then film, video, and photography. So that's what I like to play around with.
All right, cool. And who would you say like are there any creators or specific comic books that you're really into right now? I know you named like Emil Ferris's book. Is there anything else that you're currently into?
Um, well, I've been collecting Junji Ito comics for
Oh, I
about
love.
I was 16, so and I love his line work and
Oh, it's insane. It's insane.
yeah. So him for sure, also a big influence on me. Oh boy, I forget everything I ever loved. All sorts. I just whatever speaks to me, I guess. That's very vague, I know, but yeah.
How did you get introduced to Shelley Bond? It was through your dad when you landed the Shade the Changing Girl stuff
To that, yeah, it was Shelley Bond because I've known her
your whole
very long.
life.
Yeah, and I had given her my mini comics for so many years, and she's a family friend too,
Yeah.
and she suggested it, and somehow they thought, okay, we want young girls. I was 16 at the time to do this, and that was very exciting. My first real job, and that was it. So we went to a couple meetings, figured out what character, Krill, and then that was it.
And what was the experience like for you? Because that was I mean, that's a major publisher.
Yeah,
Like, it's not like you just self-published. You did something at DC Comics, which is huge.
crazy. It went well. Surprisingly, I guess making the comic, it felt the same because I was on the floor of my room just drawing it out and ruling borders. But it wasn't until it got published I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. This is the thing right here. Oh my god, that was really exciting. With Hey Amateur too, it's like it's here.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, first of all, Hey Amateur was, it was one of my favorite books that came out in 2020, and to me, I didn't use it as like a how-to. For me, it was a who's who, right? And I've said that often. Like that was how I discovered a lot of people that were in that book. I would say it was for you. It was like a mix of that book and then also the cartoonist kayfabe, because I saw your name and I was like writing down all the people that I wanted to like eventually interview or chat with, and then they mentioned it again, and I'm like, oh, I knew that was. I had a feeling that was Gilbert's daughter, but I wasn't 100% sure. If you don't do comic books, is film something that you want to pursue, or do you want
Yeah.
to do both?
I'd like to do both. What I love about comics is the freedom. Like,
Yeah.
there's no structure, where even low budget filmmaking and stuff, you really got to compromise and work with all sorts of stuff. But comics, it's, especially doing it alone, it's just you and the paper, anything can happen. And I think that's great. I think it's kind of the only creative industry that I can think of that has that freedom, and
Right.
also the ability for that to be published.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why a lot of people that are into comic books like that, because the you can do stuff in comic books that you could never probably do in a film. You could never do in television or whatever. And I think it's the most. There's so many genres in comic books and subgenres that mix stuff that you only get that in comic books, and that's why I love comic books. And I read so many different things, and I think that's why it's so easy to like recommend. Like, as I work at a shop too, so to recommend to somebody, it's easy. There's something for everybody, and maybe something I like they don't like, and vice versa.
Yeah.
What does being an artist mean to you?
Ooh, freedom, I guess, expression. I don't know. Art is everything to me. Everything I do is like, it has to do, oh, I'm looking at inspiration, or I'm writing something down, or I'm doodling an idea. Yeah, art's everything. Kind of gives a reason to live in a way, and then besides entertainment, it's great.
Yeah. Because you had an end. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, your dad is a huge artist, right? I mean, like, you had somebody that you lived with that could literally mold you into an artist, right?
Yes. It wasn't just him, though. I think it was really growing up, going to conventions, going to signings, going to panels, all sorts of stuff, and meeting other cartoonists as well. And especially for me, going to like the dinners, like publishers' dinners, and like a bunch of cartoonists would be there, and they'd end up talking about movies or music. And at a certain age, I don't remember how old I was, I would really pay attention, and I go, oh, I like this. Oh, this is fun. I like these conversations and how people think. And it's like a community. It's definitely that. And so hearing different perspectives, because my dad didn't really like sit down and tell me what to do. It was always just kind of like, oh, here's this, and here's this book if you want to check it out, or here, it was always just there, and he's very supportive and encouraging for all that.
What were some of the? I mean, I'm sure his comics were not the ones that you first started reading.
Not until 5.
Yeah. So what were some of the first comic books that he gave you, and that kind of started that love and passion for the medium?
There was a collection of Little Lit, I think by Art Spiegelman, and it was a bunch of creators. It was like Klaus and Richard Sala and Kaz. Anyway, a bunch of people in there doing like fairy tales, but a twisted comic version of it. And I had that as a kid, and I'd read it over and over and over. Like, okay, it's Sunday afternoon, I know what to do, and I'd pull that out, and it was just great because everyone was unique in the way they told the story, and their art style, and the humor. So that was definitely one. Nancy comics, I had read like Little Lulu and Tubby comics, and then they were very nice, but they always had like a lesson for kids, like, hey, maybe don't be so mean. Where Nancy just was scheming and getting away with things, and I was like, that's great. Wishing school blew up, so that was like awesome.
Is there anything you're currently reading?
Oh boy. Currently, no, I've gotten behind. I gotta get out there and get some.
What's the last thing you read?
Probably, was it Brazen? I forgot. The stories, the collection by Penelope Bajou, the French cartoonist, and it was like a collection of stories about different famous women in history.
Was that wasn't Fantagraphics, right? Was it?
No, I don't know. I'm not sure the publisher.
And then, in terms of when you're illustrating, do you do traditionally, or do you dabble in digital as well? What is your preferred medium to work?
Traditionally, I haven't really done anything digital. I don't know how, but
Well, I mean, I'm glad. As like for me, it sucks because so many. It seems like so many artists are switching to digital, and it's like now you don't even have the option to buy the original art anymore. Like when I
oh,
was, you know, so
mhm.
it's always good to hear when like, and I've often heard like my wife is an artist. Like all this is all her art behind me.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
she's tried, like I bought her the Microsoft Surface Pro. I'm like, here, use this if you want to like learn how to do it. And she's like, I can't. I don't have the tactileness of like putting like the pencil to the paper or the brush to the canvas.
And even like the mistakes on there make it something, and the
Yeah.
feel and smell of the markers or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, like, you had somebody that was there to kind of like, um, I don't want to say motivate you, but kind of like encourage you, right?
Yeah.
But not everybody necessarily has that. So what kind of advice would you give to an artist that is trying to bring their own work into the world?
Do it anyway. Even if you think it's bad, even if you think it already exists, just do it anyway. It doesn't matter. Or, I don't know. That's my thing.
I guess lastly, what's the next thing that you got working on? Are you working on anything currently?
Well, I plan to continue my Hollywood portrait series and then eventually collect that into a zine. So that's current project.
Where can we find that, and everybody listening and watching?
You can find that on Instagram at Natty Doodles, so NATY_DOODLES.
Awesome. Are you going to sell that through your Instagram, or have you thought about maybe doing like a Kickstarter to help back?
Probably just through social media right now, and then eventually figure out Kickstarter.
All right, cool. And that's the best place to find you is at Natty Doodles,
Hmm.
or if any
I
other.
do have Twitter, but it's not all
Okay.
art. At Astro Natalia, that's Twitter and Instagram.
Okay,
So
cool. All right, awesome. Well, thank you for chatting with me. Um,
thank you.
yeah, and I will. Yeah, thank you for taking time.
Well, thank you for this. This is fun.
Oh,
Okay.
of course.